Hello, welcome back to another edition of the Fundraisers podcast. Today, I have a very special friend here with me today. His name is Mike Sim. Those of you who don't know him, he has a very regular post series going on LinkedIn right now, right, where he's having 30-minute chats with various people that he knows in the industry. He's interviewed me, and I felt I also want to interview Mike as well. So I brought him onto the show for a very special reason. I think a lot of people, entrepreneurs in the industry, particularly in the funds industry, they always talk about their successes. They talk about, oh, I've raised this much money and I have a very successful business and da-da-da-da-da. But we never really hear about the war stories. We never really hear about the people that didn't quite make it and what the lessons that they learned. So Mike Sim is one of those individuals, massively inspiring for what he tried to do. He launched his own business, which we're going to hear all about, and it didn't quite go according to plan. And I think there's a lot of lessons for us, right? And I think, you know, it's really important that our listeners also learn from Mike today. So before I go in and reveal everything, I think it's better to ask Mike. So Mike, if you could just quickly introduce yourself, you know, your background and so on, that would be great. Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Iyas, for inviting me to your podcast.
Thank you.
I'm very happy to be here.
You're welcome.
In your studio. I think it is very respectful for your guests, and this is a very nice place. So my name is Mike Sim. I'm a former banker and a former fund manager. So I launched my fund management company 5 years ago, and last year I
Wind it up.
Yeah. So that has been my journey so far, and since last year I started to write on LinkedIn, sharing about my experiences so that people can learn about them and avoid the pitfalls.
Yeah. There's a whole range of points that I'm sure you're going to be able to share with us today about those experiences. Would you be able to share with us, what did you actually launch, right? What were the components of the business that you had launched?
Right. Yeah. So I launched a registered fund management company licensed by the Monetary Authority of Singapore. And subsequently, I launched a Cayman SPC fund. And with that, I went on to launch a fund platform using the Singapore VCC.
Oh, okay. Why did you go down the platform route?
Right. Because during my experience inside the fund management company, I actually came across the peers.
Yeah.
Different various kinds of portfolio managers that is also very inspired to start their own funds. But however, when they look into the financials, decided to get it kickstarted, they realized that it is not that simple because either their AUM was quite small or the cost is too high. And another part of it is that they don't have another business partner.
Oh, okay. So what's the rough costing for, like, if somebody wants to launch a fund, right? Well, how much should they set aside typically?
Right. So typically, if you want to launch a full-fledged fund itself, it's best to probably around 25 to $30 million USD. And it's best to set aside some cash flow for operations. So the cash flow operations is best probably about $1 million. Right. Yeah, that's the running cost for at least the next 1.5 years to 2 years.
So you should have tried to get minimum 30 million AUM committed and have at least $1 million of working capital.
Exactly.
In order to kind of actually survive. So that was what you were seeing. So when you realized that, you know, $1 million is a lot of, obviously that's a lot of money to kind of put into just working capital. You saw that there were a lot of PMs that were struggling, and you thought, okay, I can provide a platform because I've already got a fund management company and I've got the licenses and everything. And then you started marketing this out, right? So it was a typical platform business. I'm sure it exists already, right? It wasn't a novel idea, right?
Well, it was, I would say that we are the first in the industry, but we are definitely one of the few in the industry. Yeah, but we are not the biggest. We are definitely also not the smallest.
Yeah. So
yes, so it was just the right timing to launch it, and it was very exciting. I spoke to a lot of portfolio managers. They are very excited to come on board. In fact, we were talking and negotiating about the deals itself. But however, I met up with bad business partners.
Oh, the war stories are out. Okay.
Yes. So with that, I have to reject setting up those portfolio managers. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Okay. So the actual business, okay, you got the platform business and everything else. Like, did you have the working capital, or did you have to raise the capital?
This is a very good question. Raising capital is always in the mind of, I would say, majority of the fund managers, right? Because we have to struggle. There's the struggle between I have to manage the fund, I have to manage the returns for my investors, versus I have to go out to do the marketing, for the investors to actually subscribe to the fund. Because my personal experience is that I realized that investors wants to see the fund manager rather than see the marketing guy. Marketing guy, everyone can go out and do, right? But hearing from the fund manager makes a difference. But however, the fund managers might not be having the time to speak to the investors, or rather the fund managers might not have the capabilities or the attributes of a marketing exec to share with the investors. They might not know what is the correct marketing jargons to let the investors know that entice the investors to invest. What they know is probably the technical side of the things, which I can relate to that because I also been through that path, using technical jargons to speak with investors, and they got so confused. So eventually I took on the steps to learn the proper layman's terms to explain the difficult things into simpler languages for my investors to relate to.
Oh, right. So in terms of the strategy that you were running for your fund, right? Okay. What was the strategy you were running at that time?
Right. So when I first started, it was a very straightforward, just a global macro strategy. The investors that have been with me for the longest time, they just invested in U.S. equities, fixed income. So my strategy is just a global macro strategy that is long in the industry. What I feel that I did not take into consideration is that the economy turns around. What would I have done differently now versus back then is that I might have come up with a portfolio that is all weather.
All seasons. Everything.
All seasons. And knowing from my investors is that they prefer to have something that is of like dividends of passive income for them either on a monthly or quarterly basis. This will make them be assured that the fund is actually doing quite all right. Even if it comes down, they still are receiving some form of like passive income to them. At least that works for my investor.
When you went out, you had your working capital, right? And then you raised presumably a decent AUM to kind of keep it going. I think you were going for 5 years or 3 years. How long was it?
I was going for 3 years. Yeah.
Okay.
So it was a 3 years lock-in for the fund. I have a few agreements on hand. So it worth about 130 million USD.
Okay.
Right, for the start. And then, but however, when we really launched the funds for the subscription, because of my inexperience, I went through a lot of mistakes. The fund did not start with 130 million. It only starts with 5 million USD.
Right. And what lessons have you learned from that now? I mean, because that's a big delta, right?
Yes, that's a very big delta, a big setback, and a big lessons for me. Because throughout my banking days, I was considered lucky. Everything that I touches on works and turns into gold.
Wow.
Yeah. Which is why my investors believe in me. And when I say that we should actually start an asset management firm, they come out and supported me. Yeah. But because of my foolishness, I would say it, inexperiences, and not knowing the industry well enough, not networking enough, and not understanding the services enough, I did not manage to launch the fund in time. It took me 9 months, close to 10 months, in fact, that I eventually launched the fund. And I was already sharing with the investors from day one that I'm going to launch the fund.
Right.
Yeah. It did not happen tomorrow or 1 month later. Neither did it happen 3 months or half a year later, but it happens 10 months later. So imagine that you are the investor and you are listening to Mike Sim, right, talking about launching a fund. And the warm can grow to cold, and eventually some of them might feel, am I a scammer?
Right.
Mm.
It can change that fast.
Yeah, it can change that fast, especially during our current economic situation. I feel that many things are very uncertain right in front. There are so many great fund managers out there, but they also cannot predict what's the future is going to lie, and people are still investing in them. So naturally, when I tell my investors that, look, there's this opportunity here, this opportunity might be gone 3 months later because my fund has not launched yet.
Historically, you're a fund marketer, right?
Yes, I am.
So this is something that I'm sure a lot of fundraisers out there, they know how to get the money. And it's also very tempting to, because you have the trust of the client, to then do what you did, right? Which is, okay, I can now, do that and invest the money into strategies that the investors want, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, right? I mean, this is how I've seen a lot of people do that, but usually they have another person or a team around them. You just hinted that there was a team issue earlier, right? So what lessons have you learned around team building and the importance of having a solid team around you?
I think for management side, team building, a lot builds on the brightness of the future and the culture of the company, right? So having the correct culture, the brightness of the future is one aspect. The other ones will be, if I would have done it differently, will be that I will learn how to delegate tasks. I will create a framework, and then I will hire the right people. So hiring the right people is something that is very important, which I made a big mistake. And after hiring the right people, ask them what resources do they need, and giving them the correct resources.
Is that specifically in terms of the co-founder, or is it sort of the wider whole team you're talking about?
That will be for management and the executive that I hire in might be slightly different, because management team, we have certain management decision that we will make. Yeah, important decision like setting the right foot forward. How do we drive this ship forward? Where do we want to go in the next half year, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, right? And then we hire the correct people to come in.
Yeah. So it was more. It's very important to get the right partner. Really.
Exactly.
So you're referring specifically like, okay, if you're going to launch a business, if you're a great marketer, then you need to have somebody who complements you in another area. But it sounds like it's more important that you're aligned rather than having the skill match. I'm sure the skills were fine, but it was probably more related. At least that's what I'm hearing, that it was that you were on different paths almost.
Yeah, initially it was on the same path. Then eventually it turns out to be a different path. Yeah.
Looking back at it, going back, if you could rewind the clock, right? How would you select your co-founder going forwards?
That's a very good question. If I were to go back, what I would have done differently is perhaps we can start on from a little idea that runs into a mini project so that we can understand each other better. How's the working style like before taking onto turning it into a business. I think that will be more helpful in understanding each other's way of doing work together. My previous co-founder was my ex-colleague. I know him for about 5-6 years. So within the organization where we work, he wasn't the top performer, nor was he the bottom performer. He was just right. Yeah, and he doesn't sell on the incentive of the month or the commission itself. And he treats client with integrity. So I thought he was a pretty good fit. Yeah. But needless, did I know that, back end, there's something that is going on. So starting from a small idea, then working on mini projects together, having better understanding of each other and how we behave, our beliefs, before we go into the business. That will be what I will do if I given to wind back the clock.
Everything starts with the management team, right? Everything.
Yes.
It's the heart, it's the nervous system, it's everything, right? And if that person isn't aligned, then it's very quickly the plan's going to fail, I think. Regardless of all of that, you still survived. Okay, and I know we met, I think it was during COVID. I think the laws were being relaxed a little bit, and I was introduced by one of the partners in the Big Four, right? And I remember when I first met you, I was massively excited because you were so excited about your project, right? And at that time, you told me that, I'm pivoting the business into the direction of a platform business. And I remember you told me the story about the co-founder and everything, and that you now needed to build a team and you were looking for some advice around that. And I recall, the plan was solid, right? The excitement was there, the investor backing was there. But over that period, I think you came to some realizations, right? And that was also another journey, because there was a fund management business, but then there was also the platform business that I think you had some subscriptions for. It was going well. Do you have any lessons that you've learned on that specific product itself?
Yes, I was very excited when I decided to transform the business into a fund platform business. I thought that was very interesting and something that will benefit and add value to portfolio managers.
So let me just clarify for those listening. The platform business, what I mean by that is fund manager just comes in, trades, does the deals or whatever, doesn't have to worry about middle and back office. All of that will be provided by Mike Sim's company, right? That's basically what the model was, and there was going to be a fee.
Right. It was an exciting idea. I think that actually solved a problem in the market, handles the small, mid-sized fund managers that wants to get kick-started or want to test out a certain market in Asia Pacific. And Singapore, having launched the Singapore VCC, is excellent because this provides a great place in Asia. As we know that Hong Kong used to be the number one, then right now Singapore and is over here. And we also have our neighbors like Australia that is at the south side. So for me, I wanted to do everything in 1 month,
right?
Which is very unrealistic. But for entrepreneurs, we are always thinking day and night. Yeah, the mind is always running. But running a fund management platform and a business is very different. We need the expertise, the specialists. If I would have done it again differently, perhaps with a stronger backing for a bigger company, might add more weight and value to the branding itself. With that, I might have better success. Yeah.
That particular platform business is quite appealing to some fund managers, portfolio managers that I meet along the way. They see it as a viable option for them whilst they're scaling up, right? But for one reason or that, I think I think there's a lot of fee pressure around that business from what I've seen. And I think if you have the scale, then you could probably keep accommodating. But if you're probably slightly newer into the market, and even if you've got all the infrastructure and everything, it could be quite difficult to kind of, go through that hockey stick kind of period, right? Do you feel that you just said something that if you had a stronger backing, right? Did you try to go out and get a more strategic investor, or try to find a new co-founder to help you do that? I mean, were there any ideas on the table at the time?
A good team is definitely important for the success of the business, a good culture. And as well as that, finding portfolio managers, right? One thing that I realized is that most of the portfolio managers out there, they are holding on to their secret formula. As in their strategies, how they trade, what do they trade, why they select these stocks, or there's fixed income or whatever derivatives that they are doing, what's their strategy. So having found a reputable fund platform to launch the fund is very crucial for this fund manager that wants to kickstart over in Asia. Of course, they need to do their due diligence, but they also have to weigh between letting go of their strategies, letting the fund platform business know. Don't be afraid that they are out there to take your ideas. They are not. Yeah, they have the integrity. That's why they set up a fund platform business. Yeah, and with that, you don't have to worry about compliance is taken care of, governance is taken care of, and all you do is just to perform and leave the fundraising part. I mean, it can be an added bonus if the fund platform is raising funds for you. You can leave that fundraising part for the fund platform to do that for you. Yeah.
Oh, I see. And if you were to do that business again, right, with proper funding or maybe a more strategic backer, as you mentioned earlier, what would you do differently this time round?
Right. I don't want to do it again. Just kidding.
Okay. Yeah, that's a fair point.
Yeah. Okay. So what will I do it differently this time is I will have proper planning and a proper launch. Do my math more correctly, understanding the industry well enough, and then setting up with a bank. Yeah. Going out there to share more with people. I think networking is very important.
Right.
Internally and externally. Internally as in understanding how the organization works, understanding the flow, and externally as in go to network with other people. Most of the misconception that people have is that when we set up a fund management company is that it's very glamorous. Indeed, I am very proud of it when I got the license because there are only 700 plus 800 fund managers licensed in Singapore. Yeah, so I was very proud of it when I got it. Right. But that's only the beginning. There's a lot of work that people don't see, like how do we select service providers? How do we go out and negotiate with service providers? How do we network with the clients? How do we inform them? How do we prepare the fund fact sheet, prepare the prospectus? All these comes in place. Even builds down to selecting the office.
Yeah.
Finding which makes sense. Should it be in an industry area? Should it be in a city area? Does a $3,000 office versus a $5,000 office make sense? Do I need a pantry? Do I need... So all these builds a very big part in creating the culture and making the business work.
So if looking back at that experience that you had with Intel Holdings, right, it's probably changed you as a person, right, in a more positive way, and it's probably made you, stronger, perhaps, in some aspects, right? That's what entrepreneurship does. I remember we were talking about that in the lift just now when we were coming up, right? How's it impacted you and the way you are as a person, and the impact even at a family level, right? I mean, it must have taken, because being an entrepreneur, it's all encompassing, right? It takes over your life. It's not just in the office, it's everything. So when somebody leaves that entrepreneurship journey, right, there is repercussions, right? And it changes people. How do you think you may have changed?
I'm quite blessed that my family is very supportive of me doing the business. And it is very tough to let go employees, people that I hire. It's very tough because they also have a family to feed, right? But business is business. I have to make that decision, right? So I politely tell them that, look, I cannot support you anymore. Thank you for your service to the business. I wish you all the best for your future. Yeah, through this journey, I would say when I received the success license application from MAS, it was the highest point in my life. I was so excited. But when I returned the license back to MAS, which was just September last year, it was also one of the lowest points in my life.
Right.
Right, because I didn't want to get a license and return it back. Right?
Yes.
But this 5 years of experience is something that money cannot buy, right? And I don't think that I can ever get this kind of experience if I work in an organization. Yeah. So having to make the decision, deciding which contract to sign, deciding which direction to go, deciding which person to hire, and all these are all my decision, right? And my partners, right? So this is a very big experience for me.
Yeah, I often say that to people that I know meet in the industry, that even if you have a great idea and you just try it out and it doesn't work, you will get the same level of education in magnitude, right, as an MBA, right? I feel it's like, because you learn so many things. Like there's no, you can say go and enroll into an MBA program or some other leadership course, or business course, but doing a business, even if it's for just 6 months or 1 year, or in your case was more than 3 years, right? That's amazing, right? What that will teach you. And I think hopefully this session has been interesting for the listeners, right? And we need to have more conversations like this. This is where the real truth lies, right? Where we can have people like Mike who can come here, open up and tell us the truth. The stories that people don't want to share because they are too either ashamed or they don't want to be perceived in this way. But the reality is that Mike's story is being lived by probably millions of people out there, right? In whatever businesses that they have launched. And I think if we were to talk about the funds industry, there will be thousands of cases similar to Mike, except we would like them to come forward and share those stories with us. Aside from just all the successes in this show, we also talk about the misfortunes, the bad luck, the when things didn't go quite according to plan. So on that note, I would like to thank Mike for taking out his time to come here today and really sharing with us his views, his thoughts around his journey in the entrepreneurship world and when he launched his business. I think it's been really interesting. Would you be okay if people had further comments or questions? Would you be okay if we leave your email address at the bottom of the comment section?
Thank you, yes, for having me here.
Yes.
I really appreciate that. I'm happy to share my scar and not my wounds. And I'm happy to answer to any comments from your listeners.
That's perfect. So once again, thanks very much, Mike, for joining us today. And thank you very much, everybody, for listening. Till next time.